Welcome back to another episode of the Heroes Veritas podcast. I'm your host, Tim Bass. This is the podcast where we give you all the tools and tactics so that you can start developing your personal sovereignty. Today, I'm joined by Jeff Pease once again, good friend of mine, awesome man. And we just wanted to do this again because we like talking to each other and it's a lot of fun. But I do believe that the things that fall out of our mouth when we talk, both philosophically, ideologically, tend to be of a lot of value for each other. So I'm really excited to have you back on, Jeff. Just a reminder to everybody, Jeff is a former firefighter, wildland firefighter, if I recall.
Yeah,
so
Cal Fire.
Rucking it through, kind of in the danger zone, Q song. And now a police officer and range master for the police or the sheriff?
Department of Corrections.
Corrections. So anyway, thank you again for accepting my offer to come and have a conversation with me. I'm going to just keep it pretty casual today because I miss you, bud, and we just haven't talked.
Yeah. Might as well kill two birds with one stone.
That's why I started a podcast in the first place. Anybody that says otherwise is lying.
Yeah.
It's just to create validity for, when our girlfriends and wives ask us why we were spending so much time with our friends, really.
Yeah, well, and like my wife tells me all the time, she goes, "What did you guys talk about?" And usually we're just shooting the shit. I'm like, "I'm just shooting the shit." So now I can actually be like, "Oh, we actually dove into some deep shit because we're actually setting aside time to talk about it." So
yeah, for the audience here, though, we might want to tailor down the finishing each other's sentences and songs. They might get uncomfortable.
Yeah, right.
So we, just background, Jeff and I and our buddy Antonio, we get on mic together and we game together when we just want to have some recreation and downtime. And a lot of times when we're gaming, we are just shooting the shit, but we do get into some deep topics and kind of unpack some things. And in the middle of that, the fun part of that is we'll just start singing, old 80s power ballads and finishing each other's sentences and stuff like that. And so if you don't have that already, I highly recommend men finding other men to go and sing power ballads with because it's extremely elating.
Therapeutic.
Yeah, very therapeutic. So last time we talked, Heroes was doing a completely different thing than what we're doing now. We were trying to get you out to do basic pistol course, which don't think I've forgotten. I'm still going to drag you into one of those.
Oh, 100%.
Because those are just fun. But one of the other things that we talked about in the scope of like the change from Heroes Veritas to now is the change of Jeff Pease to now. So you've been on your own personal little journey last couple months.
Yeah, go back to us talking about gaming. I was in a really bad spot, and I talked about it earlier with you. Like, it's really uncomfortable for me to ask for help. I don't want to burden other people with my problems. Especially in my careers, I'm the one that helps people. I'm not the one that burdens people. So I remember we were playing games and stuff like that, and finally, like, I think it was just this little Tim comment, like, "Hey bud, how you doing?" I was like, "You know what? I'm not really doing too good right now." You know what I mean? And we ended up diving into this deep conversation about self-worth and looking at yourself and stuff like that. And then Tony hops on and he just is quiet because Tim and I are having our therapy session. But yeah, it was one of those things where it was for me, it felt like leaping into the fire. I came to a realization through my dad passing away and stuff like that as far back as I can remember, I don't like myself. I wasn't very nice to myself, and I don't like myself. And I attribute to every success in my life as luck or dumb luck. You know what I mean? Like, I just fell into it. And I came to this realization that when you live your life like that, my logical brain is telling me that luck eventually runs out. And so the whole time you're just waiting for that other shoe to fall. So with my wife, I'm just waiting for my luck to run out and for her to realize she can do better. For my job, I have imposter syndrome where I feel like they're going to figure out that I wasn't a good choice, and they're going to take it away from me because I got this through luck. And I finally realized, like, is this the life that I want to live? And so I was like, what can I change? What can I do? Well, first I gotta talk better to myself. And second, I gotta do something about what I don't like. And so I've been on a, kind of a health kick. I have a goal for myself to be in the best possible shape when I'm 40. I'm 38 right now. I'll be 39 in March, and I'm already taking the steps.
I
And
fucking told you on that. I called you on that. I was like, why not
yeah,
6 months? Like, why is it 40?
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, true, true. Yeah, it should be 6 months, but I am. I'm
Well, I'm
down.
gonna
I'm
keep pushing you on that. And and
100%.
and look at like what you've done already, right? Like we just talked the other day, like 20 pounds. That's a massive undertaking in a couple months. And again, it's not luck, right? Like to
Yeah.
unpack that, like that was intentionality, dedication, strict intentionality, right? Like you had, like I asked you, I was like, well, have you still not had a cheat meal? And you're like, well, I had focaccia bread. I was like, that's not a cheat, that's carbs. Like, so like it's that calibration away from the luck is a process in itself, right? Like when you dive into it, because I was like that for a while too, right? Like this self-effacing, at a fear of being self-aggrandizing, right? We almost
Mhm.
like pack it in the same realm as like, oh, I'm just being humble. It's like, no, you're not. You're being self-effacing, and nobody respects somebody that's self-effacing,
Yeah.
right? And as a society of men, we've kind of gotten to that point, right? Because and we've talked about this, like we fear being labeled as vain or pretentious.
Mhm.
And as a result, we overcorrect back to this like self-effacing, like, oh, it's just luck, or I got what was some of the other stuff, like either I got lucky, or we start to actually, and this one irks me more than anything, men start to self-efface by diminishing their spouses or partners. She
Mhm.
must be blind, she must be stupid. I just hope she never finds out. I hope she never realizes. Like if we unpack that a little bit further, I don't know, I'm kind of taking over here, but
No, go ahead.
think about what you're saying about your spouse, like your person. You're literally
Mhm.
saying, I'm with somebody too dumb to realize what they have. I'm with somebody who's got such a low view of themselves that they're going to be with me. Like, I wouldn't talk to my person like that.
Yeah.
So it forces us to recalibrate how we see ourselves too, because if you don't have the tool set yet to see yourself beyond that self-effacing side and
Mhm.
aggrandizing yourself, honor your person and be like, well, they wouldn't make that mistake. I don't think they're stupid. I don't think they're blind. I don't think that they're, all these other negative reasons that my person would be with me. And funny story, because we both know Antonio, they broke me of that. Him and his wife broke me of that luck mindset slash self effacing, pity me thing.
Mhm.
Sitting on the back porch, and I was really deep in it, coming out of a divorce, really deep in it. And I'm just fucking, I'm stupid, blah, 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 blah. And they just start hitting me with a pillow. I mean, like, fucking, like, like they were like going to town. And they literally looked at me after they were done and they're like, don't talk shit about our friend like that, for one. And for two, don't talk shit about us like that. Like, we're too stupid to know a good person when we see one.
Mhm.
That was my epiphany. Like, oh, fuck. Like, while we may avoid self aggrandizing and being labeled as pretentious, by going the opposite direction, if we disconnect ourselves from what we're doing and saying, it goes a long way in helping us correct that behavior when we attach it to the people we care about.
Oh, 100%. And like I think it also like stems from, as a child and stuff like that. I'll make fun of myself before you can make fun of me.
Oh, that was
Because then
definitely my survival
yeah,
tactic. Yeah.
yeah, that was my survival tactic. So in that, I think that created that little voice in my head, the one that's just constantly nagging me and putting me down and doing all these things. And I think I talked to you about my whole pencil technique,
Oh, I love that technique.
but
I think it's great. You should share it.
so my pencil technique, every time I have a bad thought or I hear that voice, I physically visualize me picking up a pencil. And once I feel like I'm picking up that pencil, I go, "Oh shit, you're picking up that pencil. Put that pencil down." And I physically just kind of self-regulating myself, self-checking myself. I put that pencil down, and I don't punish myself for picking up that pencil. And I know that that day I could probably pick up that pencil 10 different times, but I'm going to put it down every time. And I think that's going to retrain my brain, retrain how I act, where I'm consciously checking in with these subconscious thoughts. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, I told my wife about it. My wife goes, "Wow, like, I love that," and she uses it. And now, like, we'll talk like that, and I'm like, we'll be having a conversation, and I'll just be like, "Oh." shit, I just had a pencil thought. And she's like, really? What was it? And I'll tell her about it. And she's like, oh, wow, yeah, no. And I was like, no, but I put the pencil down. I'm good. And it's just opening up even more communication with my spouse. So it's been really helpful. It's so stupid and so simple, but it's been really helping me because it's self-regulating yourself, and just
Yeah.
putting your money where your mouth is.
And I think it's really important the object you chose, right? And this was something I learned early on in my coaching career, is how many of us use words as weapons. And so the fact that the pencil is innocuous and super general, like you can pick it up and never think I'm gonna John Wick myself,
Yeah.
right? Like there's no point where you can pick it up and be like, okay, well, because I picked it up, I can beat myself up over it.
Yeah.
Whereas we weaponize a lot of the things that we think, right? We weaponize the thoughts as hammers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we put ourselves in this kind of like self-deprecating cycle. It's like picked it up, picked up this mace, hit myself in the head with it. Now I'm hitting myself in the head with the fact that I hit myself in the head with it, and the cycle
Mm-hmm.
continues. Whereas with the object being innocuous like a pencil, you can set it down at any point, you can pick it up at any point, and it has no repercussion on the actual thought itself.
Mm-hmm.
And so it creates a break in the cycle, right? Like you said, it's like this anchor point where it's like I can pick it up 1,000 times. I never hit myself in the head with it. I
Yeah.
never beat myself up over a pencil. Like I just pick it up and put it back down. And I think whether your tactic, for those listening, if your tactic is a pencil or a rubber ball or a squishy mat or a pillow, whatever that is for you, that comfort piece or whatever that innocuous item is, it needs to be anchored in the idea that you can't beat yourself up with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever it is. Like if the bouncy ball becomes a giant lead ball, then it's a problem, right? It has to be innocuous for it to work. And the other thing that you said that I really like that I want to unpack is what you did with it was you created an inflection point of leadership with your wife. You're
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going to test this theory. It's working for me. Share it with my wife. My wife is like, interesting. Let me try it. She tries it. She loves it. And now you're both using a technique that you both understand. And now there's language associated with it that allows for that same innocuous unpacking that
Mm-hmm.
previously would have been spikes and thorns and difficulty and a little bit of stickiness. Now it's just like I had a pencil moment. It's like it's
Yeah.
fun, it's
Yeah.
lighthearted, and
Yeah.
it dissolves that stigmatism around picking up the pencil, right? And I
Yeah.
love that. I love that that was the result. Like that's from a relationship standpoint. I mean, that's what we're always looking for, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
secret sauce everybody's looking for. How do you dissolve the barrier? And I feel like you guys have found a way, at least for you guys, to do that in such a functional way.
And for me, I'm such a internalized person. So, I love to mull things over in my head 1,000 times before I verbalize it, and I hold on to it. And my wife can tell me when I'm either withdrawn or really deep in thought. And she'll be like, what's going on? And I feel like I have to have it perfectly unpacked before I can explain it. But this is really forcing me to just, in that moment, tell her, oh, shit, I just had a pencil thought. And then she goes, well, what was it? And then I'm able to just, bleh, just talk it out like, oh, I had this thought. This was my thought in my head. And I put that pencil back down. And she's like, wow, thank you for sharing that with me. So I don't have those moments. I have less of those moments. I'm not perfect, but I have less of those moments where I'm so stuck within myself and so stuck with my head. I'm able to just be like, it seems less vulnerable. I don't know if it's something that it helps me seem less vulnerable or if it's just easier. But I think the fact, like you were saying, it's just this little language we have now where we understand, and I don't have to explain as much. Like, oh, I had a pencil thought. The thought was this, and this. And she's like, oh, wow. And then I put it down, and I don't have to explain like that's not how I really feel, or I don't want to do that. She goes, no, I know it's a negative thought that
It's framed
it's
it.
not serving me. Yeah,
The language frames it, which allows you
yeah.
to remove the egotistical emotional side of it.
Mhm.
It's now just a matter of fact statement.
Mhm.
And there's no emotion wrapped up in it because you framed it with the language of like, I had a pencil thought. So
Mhm.
what she now hears is this is a fleeting moment of thought that I am correcting. So
Mhm.
now in that one statement, you have now established I am the leader of my own thoughts. I am actively correcting it. And I'm inviting you down this journey with me, which is exactly when women talk about vulnerability, right? I have a lot of heartache and I get a lot of hate because I am very anti vulnerability between a partner to their wife,
Mhm.
for men to women. And then women always come back and they're like, but I want him to share and I want him to be like this. And it's like, no, you don't. You think you do until they do. And then it creates a subversion of their leadership, because now you start to worry, like, can they handle this? Can they protect me? Can they keep us safe? Are we okay? Right? Like
Mhm.
financial struggles, right? Like a lot of
Mhm.
women want to hear more about the financial side from men. And it's like, what you want to know is we're good.
Mhm.
That's what you truly want to know. If they say we're not good, now there's doubt.
Mhm.
So men have to be very clear about, like, here's where we're at. Here's the solution I've already figured out. And this is where we're going. Otherwise, if you're just like, this is where we're at with no solution, that doubt permeates resentment, whether you
Mhm.
like to admit it or not. And so I'm very much against talking to your wife as your best friend the same way you would talk to a male best friend.
Mhm.
It's a different dichotomy. It's a different archetype of conversation. So what you've done is you've given yourself the tool to have a vulnerable conversation with your wife without subverting your leadership, without subverting your character, without subverting your emotional integrity, which is
Mhm.
then going to make you feel more in your space to be like, this is the way it is. Very matter of fact, let me lead us through this journey. And now she can feel safe in, this isn't like an insecurity. This is a confident statement of fact that he has a plan for, and we're moving through it together.
Yeah.
That's that is what I believe is so powerful about that technique that you've created with the pencil technique, is it's kind of bridged the gap between you know, unhealthy vulnerability and security,
Mhm.
right? It's that middle sweet spot because of that framing. I had a pencil moment. I'm good to go now. If you want to know about it, I can tell you about it. I'm not insecure about it. You don't have to feel insecure about it because it's framed. It's in this
Mhm.
box of like, this is where we're moving. I
Yeah,
love it. I think that's great.
and I'm stating a solution, not a problem.
Yeah,
That's and I think that's huge.
100%. I think that's underrated in a lot of cases, right?
Mhm.
Like, what's the difference between sharing a state of the union versus whining? The solution,
Yeah. Exactly.
right? Because
Yeah.
if you're whining, there's no solution. You're just trying to get it off your chest, and that's not. I think that's where my heartache originally started from, the concept of quote unquote women wanting vulnerability, is it's been conflated with men whining without solution.
Yeah.
They don't want that, but that's what is said,
Mhm.
right? That is what is promoted on social media. But the reality is, you still want to know that they're a leader of the house. You still want to know that they got you, that you're safe, that you have all the pillars intact, stability still there. You're not questioning whether or not they still love you or all that stuff. You just want to be allowed in the space. Like you said, you're very intrinsic, you're internal. They still
Mhm.
want to be allowed in the sanctum. You've
Mhm.
created a keyhole basically for them to look in and
Yeah.
go, oh, okay, there's the sanctum. I'm part of this.
Yeah.
And that interaction and communication is going to be super important long term, I believe.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
so I think that that's a good tool that I hope others can start to implement. Whether it's, like I said, whether it's a pencil or some other innocuous object, if you can create the container for those conversations to frame it as a solution based system, matter of fact, remove all the insecurity, you're going to be in a much better place to explain yourself and then receive you the way you want to be received, as opposed to just kind of like emotionally word vomiting, which is what a lot of people do now. And then, 6 months down the line, a year down the line, they're like, why doesn't my wife respect me? Well,
Yeah.
you've subverted your own character for too long.
Yeah.
Now it's come to a head. And then you have to dig yourself out of the hole, which we talked about on
Mhm.
the last episode. Like, a lot of people get in the hole and they think that doing the same thing in reverse is going to get them out of the hole, but you got to go far and beyond
Yeah.
to get out of the hole. Otherwise, you're just going to end up in the same hole.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. I love hearing that. So, one of the things that I thought about when we were talking about that over, is that self respect side, that the conversation with yourself of like, I never liked myself. What was the moment that you realized? I think you mentioned that it was with the passing of your dad, but like, what really kicked that off? That
You know,
realization.
yeah, I was I just passed my lieutenant's exam, so I'm able to apply for lieutenant's positions. And I was really thinking to myself, and I'm like, man, I was like, I was lucky enough to make it to sergeant. I don't know if someone's going to pick me as lieutenant. I'm all like, what do you mean? Like, you passed the test, you've gotten to great spots in your careers, like this can't all be luck. Like either that, I need to play the lottery right now because I'm the luckiest son of a bitch ever. And then I was just like, why do I keep attributing everything to luck? And I'm like, well, because I don't want to give myself the credit of earning anything. And I'm like, well, why do I not want to give myself the credit for earning anything? And then that little voice just hops right up and goes, because you don't deserve it. You're a piece of shit because you don't, you don't do everything. I'm like, holy shit. Like that's that voice that's always right back there. Like that's that voice whispering in my ear. That's that voice. It just got super loud at that moment because I started questioning it. And all of a sudden it wanted its power back. So it just started going full bore. And I was like, holy shit. And then I started thinking about like, when did this start? And as far back as I can remember, I could be like, I never really like thought of myself as like a cool guy, a good guy, a this and that. And it's just like I'm like, holy, as far back as I can remember, I never really liked myself. And I would hide it, through humor, through other things and stuff like that. And like I just realized like, fuck man, and I'm raising a little boy. And I'm like, is this what I'm gonna pass on to him? You know what I mean? Like, is this my legacy? And I'm like, no, I want my son to see me do amazing things, not sit there and tear himself down. And so, I don't want him to carry on this generational trauma. It's gonna end with me. And there's a lot of things that I'm really striving for to end with my, generational traumas to where it's gonna end with me. He's gonna have his own traumas and his own issues, but that's gonna be on his own accord. It's not gonna be shit that's been carried on through my lineage. And so, they say I'm gonna mend the arrow on this one. So
Yeah,
that
I
was
imagine
that
that
was
wants to
that.
say be the one. Be the one
Yeah,
that changes your family tree, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to unpack there is like that voice. Because I think a lot of people are in that boat, right? Like I have a successful coaching business because a lot of people are in that place, right?
Mhm.
And that voice does get louder before it gets quieter.
Mhm.
And I think there's a misunderstanding. A lot of people see it as like an indication that, oh, this is the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
No, that is the right way. That is your voice trying to keep you under the glass ceiling. And, part of that is maybe you realize it, maybe you don't, but being a parent and having that voice and using luck as a crutch becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is if you constantly give it to luck, and then when something good happens to you, right, it's of no accord of your own, which means when anything bad happens to you, it is because you are. It's a statement of
Mhm.
fact rather than a statement of effort, right? If it's luck when it's good, then it's because I'm a piece of shit when it's bad, which
Mhm.
means no matter what, it's a self fulfilling prophecy because you don't give yourself credit. So when bad things happen, it's because you're bad. When good
Mhm.
things happen, you're bad luck or you have good luck. Ironically, as a parent, seeing that, how many, or rather, experiencing other parents who continuously leverage that with their own children, right? The amount of times I've seen a kid use their imagination, win a competition, do whatever, right? And the parents are like, wow, what a lucky boy. So now you're associating their effort off the playing field, training, getting good at things, or their natural talent to luck, not the amount of hours allow them to develop or push them through or the time with their coaches or whatever, right? And when you say like you now have a little boy and you don't want him to perpetuate that and he'll have his own challenges and you don't want to perpetuate that, how would you has this rather to get to a more poignant question, has this realization changed how you interact with him in regards to either praise, coaching, training, guidance?
Yeah, because definitely with the praise and like the coaching, like I'm coaching a soccer, right? But it's youth 8 soccer, so it's herding cats at this point.
Yeah,
But
keep them on the
um,
field.
yeah, yeah. Don't chase the bee, chase the ball. Um, but I've realized I've never told my son he's lucky. I've always told him if he loses, I tell him you gotta try harder, bud. Like you put the effort in, you're gonna win. And if he wins, I tell him, hey man, look at all that hard work that you put in. You know what I mean? Because I'm super cognizant about it. You know, um, and I think it's just because I struggled so much with it. I'm like, I don't want you to go down this path, man. This is a dark, long path.
Yeah.
And and you talk about that voice. I think the best part for me was to kind of humanize it, to see it as a voice. You know what I mean? Like this stupid little gremlin or this monkey on my back that's whispering bullshit into my ears, and then and then putting it into a physical thing, right back to the pencil thing, where I pick the pencil. I'm like, no, that's not a stupid voice. I'm putting that pencil right back down. You know what I mean? And then, like you said, not penalizing myself for picking up the pencil. And I think that was the biggest thing because, like you said, like I had that bad thought. I'm like, why are you thinking like that? God damn! It's like, well, then you're just tearing yourself down for thinking like that. So it won. You know what I mean? And so, but as far as my son, like, I'm never, because I don't want him to feel like anything he got attributed to was luck. You know, and I just like I never tell him he's lucky. Um, Even if I do feel like some is luck, I'm gonna be like, hey man, you must have done something good in some other area and you're getting rewarded. You know what I mean? You got some good karma, but
Yeah.
I don't want them to think about luck because it's such a demeaning thing to your own self worth to just think like, something fell out of the sky into your lap. And I want his self worth to be sky high because it's a dark journey to have low self worth as a child and go all the way to adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. I can speak from experience on that. It's funny because it presents itself in so many different ways, right? You have the introvert
Hmm.
where the darkness is just like everybody can see it, but he just doesn't talk about it. Then you have people like me who I'm an extrovert, and so I mask it with, or I did for a long time. I masked it with confidence,
Hmm.
right? So everybody was like, "Oh man, he must be, doing good," and I'm like going home and crying to my mom because I'm miserable,
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but a follow up question in regards to, so you don't put anything on luck. How do you garner humility, right? So like
So
if you're constantly telling him it's because you're great, how do we rein in the humility side?
so if like with anybody who like on my team with these little guys, right? And they'll go down and they'll score a goal and they turn around and they're celebrating. I'll give them a high five and then I meet like, all right, guys, we gotta get ready to go. Let's go. You know what I mean? I'm not giving them the you're the best ever or something like that. I'm like, hey, we still got a job to do. Like
On to
one
the
goal is
next
not,
one.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. This one goal is not going to win the game, guys. Let's get back on there. And I think just showing Bryce and like I do this with Bryce when he's in praise. I give him praise, and then I show him we're going to move on to the next thing. And when he's also in distress, I'll give him a moment to whine about it, and then I'm like, I'll give him a few times. If he's hurt or something like that, he'll cry about it for, like a few seconds, and I'm like, all right, buddy, let's start calming down. Let's start looking at what's going on, stuff like that. And we're going to start calming ourselves down. And, I just tell him like, hey, the more you calm down, the less it's going to hurt. Because the
yeah,
more you work yourself up, it's going to hurt more. And then he starts doing deep breaths with me and stuff like that. And
that's cool.
it's really cool to see. I mean, it's a little different when mom's around because he can ham it up for mom a little bit. But if it's just
I
me
think
and him, we can get
that's a
through it
pretty
pretty fast.
standard
Yeah, yeah. You're not
mechanism.
going to get through that. You're not going to get through that. It works. He's not going to ditch something that works.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think I recently posted a video to my Instagram, and it's around two parents and how most of the negative statistics come from single mother homes,
Hmm.
right? And when I say negative statistics, I mean incarcerations, runaways, gang activity, things like that, violent crimes, things of that. Most of those statistics are like above 50% come from motherless or single mother homes. So
Hmm.
fatherless homes or abandoned fathers or bad fathers or whatever. And it really highlighted for me like the metric by which temperance happens within a home, within a child, right? Like I see this a lot and I've talked about this a lot and I don't know if we touched on this last time or somebody else, but I don't like the current prevailing wisdom of mothers trying to force their fathers to be second mothers,
Yeah.
expecting them to have the same nurturing mentality, compassion, softness, right? Like there's a prevailing push from strong independent mothers, women who want the men to be second mothers and handle a situation the same way that they would handle a situation, right? The greatest example of this is women who are helicopter moms and then they come home after they trusted the husband to watch the kid and the kid bumped his head or had a bruised knee or whatever, and the dad's watching the football game but not actually paying attention to the child. It's like the male masculine side is managed chaos, right? Like women is managed order, meaning
Mm-hmm.
helicopter, control the whole situation, teach them the guardrails, wrap them in bubble wrap, make sure that they're good. When they get with dad, however, dad gives them freedom to go and fall and scrape their knee and hurt themselves. They're not going to die with dad, but they're not going to get the oh poor baby treatment from dad either.
Yeah.
And the dichotomy of those two are really what create well-rounded humans. And when you miss one or the other, right? And I'm not trying to shit on moms. That's not what I'm doing at all. I have a healthy respect for matriarchs and mothers in general because the way I was raised was primarily female.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but the reality is that if the father doesn't have a softening from the mother, then the kids grow up resenting the dad.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This archetype is like the militant father, the overly aggressive coach, like
Yeah.
just over the top, overcorrected, right? Because they never had the nurturing, compassionate side to soften. But the flip side of that is the Peter Pan syndrome narcissist that comes out of single mother homes who believes that women's job is to take care of them because mom didn't create the proper boundaries to
Mm-hmm.
teach them that women are not here to be your enslaved. They're here to support you, but you got to own up. You got to do the work. And so the dichotomy between the two, like you were saying a moment ago, I feel is not intrinsically, instinctually built in all of us, right? I can get away with more from mom because mom's the
Yeah.
master compassionate one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna cut it pretty short when it comes to dad because dad's gonna fucking check me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an over dominance of one or the other, you end up with negative outcomes. But if you have
Mm-hmm.
a good balance between the two, you come out with positive outcomes.
Yeah. And it's like I tell my wife all the time, you're raising a son, I'm raising a man.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And like, he will always be your son, but I gotta get him ready to be a man. And it's like and this is all like I was raised by a single mom, and I have, I thank God I had a good grandfather, but I didn't have a really good relationship with my dad, so this is all uncharted territory for me. But I never want my son to do stuff out of fear. I want him to do out of respect. And so I'm not, my son never goes a day without hearing "I love you." My son tells me he loves me all the time. You know what I mean? And I just, and even in passing, "Hey, buddy, what's up? I love you." He goes, "I love you too." You know what I mean? But he also knows that if he gets in trouble, our mom goes, "Hey, I'm gonna go tell dad." He's like, "No, no, no, no." You know what I mean? Because he respects me. He knows that there's no bullshit with me. You're not gonna get away with all the little tricks that you're gonna get away with mom. And so it's this fun little balance they actually have. But and it's like you talk about the gender roles, like a kid's, especially a little boy, his first love is his mom. You know what I mean? That's his first love in his life. And so that's where he's going to get most of his love from, most of that. And then like, I'll go right back to it. She's raising a son, I'm raising a man. And it doesn't mean I don't love him. I would die for that kid in a heartbeat. But I don't want to raise a little asshole. You know what I mean? So I
I like
also
that.
gotta, yeah, yeah,
I think a lot of people, we talked about this last time, like a lot of people overlook the fact that you got to like your kids.
yeah.
And it's easy, like if you don't do it right, to not like your kids, you know.
Hmm.
And there's a quote that I absolutely love from The Crow, and it's "Mother is the name for God on the lips of all children." And it's this concept that I absolutely love, which is like from the minute that they are come into this world, they have a connection to their mother that is deeper and more profound than anything on this planet, and that never breaks.
Mm-mm.
But because that connection, just like people are with their religious proclivities, they take it for granted. And so you need a mechanism to balance it out. And that to me is the father figure. That's the
Hmm.
masculine side of like my dad had this thing that he used to say that I absolutely love and will continue is that may be your mom, but first and foremost, she's my wife. And
Yeah.
so to your point of like, I never like that's not true. I was afraid of my dad, but not because of what my dad did, but just because I was a scared little kid. Like my dad scared the shit out of me. He was 6'3", huge, massive, leathery hands. Like he scared the shit out of me. But I had
So,
so much respect. I didn't do things because I was afraid of punishment because he never spanked me.
yeah, it was more of fear of disappointment. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I didn't want to
Yeah.
let him down.
Yeah.
You
And I
know,
think that's
he was a
that's the
profound,
relationship I'm
important
striving for.
figure.
Yeah.
I didn't want to let him down. That was it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, don't get me wrong. I know in some day Bryce in his teenage will probably try and challenge me, and I hope I have a little fear left in him so it gets off the old.
my
But
dad, I've told this story a couple times. I don't know if I've ever told it on this podcast, but I remember this one time I was 16, and my mom was more a proponent of being a friend than a mom. That was more
Mhm.
her thing. And I had no respect for my mom. Zero. I had no respect. I remember one time she came in to ask me to do the dishes. I just turned the volume up on the TV. Like I
Mhm.
had zero respect for my mom. And the reason for that was one, I was an angsty teenager. But
Mhm.
two, her relationship with my sister was very, very different than my relationship with her. I was constantly
Mhm.
getting chewed out. My sister was constantly getting away with stuff. And that
Mhm.
actually continues to this day. Um, so it was a very different relationship. And one day my mom took me out and she was like, "Why don't we get along?" And I was like, "Well, because you have this relationship with my sister." And it came down to is like she calls you bitch and all this other stuff. I couldn't do that. She's like, "Oh yeah, you totally can." And I was like, "Okay, cool. Like we'll give that a shot." So my mom walks to the back room of our house, and I'm in the kitchen or I'm in the living room. And I didn't realize my dad had come in from work. 17-hour shift, 120-degree weather in Las Vegas, sitting in a metal shed working on cars all day. He was tired. He comes in the side door right as I say, "F you, you bitch," because we had just had a joke about that. My
Mhm.
dad doesn't know any of this. My dad comes in the house hearing his son of 14, 15, whatever I was, saying, "Fucking bitch," is what I said, and laughing, right? Well, my dad hears that, comes around, and there's like a little, like, the way that the double wide trailer was set up was like the kitchen had this like wall, doors
Mhm.
here. He goes around to the couch, and I just see him like this, like go for my neck, picks me up by my neck, and tosses me 8 feet to the other couch. And he's like, "You ever talk to my wife like that again, I'll fucking end you." And then left, disappeared to the back room. And I was like, "All right, man. All right. All right."
Yeah. Yeah. Life flashed before your eyes.
Yeah. But the odd thing was like it if I tell that story to youth now or activists now, they're like, "Oh, that's abuse." Like I didn't see it as abuse from my father. Like I was like, "Dude, I fucking stepped out of line and he fucking corrected me the way a man corrects another man."
Mhm.
So the way that I recall that was pride. It was awareness of like that's the line, but also of like my dad literally could have.
Yeah.
He could have easily killed me.
Oh, yeah.
So for me, it was more like the amount of restraint, putting myself in another man's shoes, hearing his wife get called a bitch as he's walking in from a shitty day, and the amount of love and restraint he had to exude to not want to fucking literally beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
The most I got was just fear of God, pick you up, throw you over. I
Yeah.
could if I wanted to, but I'm not. But in today's world, it's like that's abuse. I've never thought of it as abuse.
No.
But to your point, like when eventually you're raising a man, in which case he needs to understand there are consequences of a physical nature when dealing with other men, right? And my VP, Matt, he's the vice president over here at Heroes. We talk about it all the time. He's like, most men no longer fear the accountability getting punched in the mouth.
Oh, yeah. Keyboard
It's
warriors.
just not a reality for people anymore. Except if you fuck around with Matt, he's 6'4". He'll hit you in the fucking mouth. Like
Mhm.
he won't wait. He'll just hit you. He's very similar to my dad. And I respect the hell out of that because I believe good societies run on consequence. The minute you rob a society of consequence, law and order goes out the window.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you look at any kind of pack animal, the alpha will show his teeth whenever he needs to. It's not like the alpha's going and killing every male in his pride or in his pack, but he's showing his teeth and nipping at him to maintain dominance. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things where like you step out of line, this is what happens. And like you hit the nail on the head. Like there's no consequence anymore. People can talk shit via the internet, and all you are is an anonymous person behind a keyboard. And 98% of the time, ain't no person gonna have the guts to say that to anybody's face because the consequences there.
Yeah. Because the reality is there's a risk.
Yeah.
And when you look at like what you instill, like going back to the concept is like the mother raises her son, and in raising her son, she should be teaching him to honor women.
Hmm.
However, the man should be raising a man who is reinforced to honor women properly and maintain a level of decorum from fear of consequence. Like I can't tell you how many times my dad's like told me, he's like, you ever do that, I'll kill you myself.
Mhm.
And it was a reality for me, as like, I respect the hell out of my dad. It wasn't from fear of him killing me literally. It was fear of him figuratively writing me off as a man. Like
Mhm.
if I garnered the disappointment of my father, that is the figurative death of myself.
Oh yeah.
Because this man I hold in such high regard doesn't see me as a man. And when you have, and we've talked about that, we talked about this last time, is that struggle of like not having that role model. Luckily, you had your grandfather.
Mhm.
Like, if you didn't have that role model, which a lot of men don't in these days, especially with, divorce being 50%, 60% now, fatherless homes going up 47% in the last like 10, 15 years, something like that. Without that model to lean on, to say, this is who I garner respect from, everything goes to the dogs. Everything.
Mhm.
Your honor system goes out, your structure of value goes out, your priorities go out, your discipline goes out the window. Like, you have no metric to hold you in line, because you have no respect model to keep you, to seek, right? Like, you no longer look up to anything. You're just kind of like, well, everything is what it is, and you become this like cynical narcissist who just thinks everything is just what it is, and there's no consequence to your actions. Because, like, I've come across this before. Like, I'm going to say this but it might get me in trouble. But I was talking with a guy, and we were out and we're all partying, we're all having a good time, and we're coworkers at the time, and it's like 22, 23, and he's running his mouth, and I kept telling him, like, dude, you're being super disrespectful. Please stop. And then eventually I was like, dude, if you don't fucking quit, I'm gonna knock you out. And he's just like, he literally, well, we work together. You can't do that. And he's literally in the middle of saying that to me, and I hit him, and he crumpled to the floor. And the next day we had to go to work. And I went to work and I had to address it. And I was like, well, we were on private time. I warned him multiple times. I have many witnesses. He believes that he is safe, not because he is capable or safe, but because he believes somebody will come to his defense.
Mhm.
And that is society in general right now. And my dad, luckily for me, taught me that doesn't work. Like, it will not work, because he's like, if you need proof of that, know I exist. My dad was
Yeah.
like, nothing will stop me if I want to hit you.
Yeah.
No jail time, no fine, no cop. Nothing will stop me. So if I exist, there's no safety if you're not capable.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't have that. I was lucky to have that experience, but I think a lot of people don't have that experience,
Yeah.
right? They truly believe that a piece of paper with a fine on it or a ticket is going to stop a violent aggressor.
Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about the psycho crazy crackhead type violent aggressors. I just mean somebody who's tired of your shit.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people out there that are completely sane, know exactly what they're doing, and just get tired of your shit and are willing to take the consequence of knocking you out
Oh, and
because
it goes
somebody had to
from,
hit you.
yeah, verbally berating people, assaulting people. People think that they can go and push you, rip something out, kick your car, this and that. It's like, no, you're gonna carry home some teeth if you do that to my shit. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, and it's I've talked about it a lot, and the reason I said I'll probably get in trouble is because it probably doesn't align with some code of ethics somewhere in some employee handbook. But um, the reality is that I don't worry about stuff like that. I address a situation as the situation presents itself. And if you've pushed me, because like we've talked about, I'm a very agreeable person by nature. Like, I don't really like conflict, but I'm not averse to it either. Like, I'm not running from it. And so while I've garnered a certain level of self control and self restraint to try a bunch of other tactics before I get to a point of like physical altercation, it's not because I'm not capable. It's because there are consequences that I have to be fully willing to accept, like possibly losing my job or whatever, right? In order to take that on. And it goes back to that statement we've talked about a number of times, is like, you need to be a monster and then have it under control.
Mhm.
I think most people are weak and think that that's a virtue. And it's like, no, yeah, you know, the role of the father, to kind of circle this back into what we were talking about and get off my soapbox here, but the role of the father is to give you that guardrail of like, here's why you need to be a monster, because people like me exist.
Mm-hmm.
I exist. And when it comes to like being a father, I couldn't imagine, you said it earlier, like, what am I leaving behind for them? What am I teaching them? If you aren't teaching your son that there are people that exist in the world that they should worry about, and that's why they have a reason to develop themselves, you're missing your role by a large margin, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, everybody has someone who can just manhandle them. You know what I mean? Like you could be goddamn Francis Ngannou, and there's someone out there that could probably mollywop them. You know what I mean? And you can't walk around not realizing that person exists. And to circle back what you were talking about, I teach classes on verbal de-escalation. I'm like a double black belt in jujitsu verbal de-escalation due to the volatile place that I've had to work. But I'll teach my son those techniques on how to verbally de-escalate a situation. But my son will know that he's never going to lose his right to defend himself.
Yeah.
And I've told we dealt with that with bullying. You know what I mean? I think I saw it on TikTok or something, but it was the talk, tell, tackle. And he was getting bullied on the bus. So I'm like, hey, I want you to remember talk, tell, tackle. Talk to the person. You're gonna say, hey, don't do that. I don't like it when you do that. And if they do it again, you're gonna tell somebody. And so he told the bus driver, and then he's all, I want, did he stop? He goes, no, he didn't stop. I'm like, what'd you do? He's like, I told the bus driver again. And I was like, what happened? He goes, well, then we got to school. And I'm like, okay. I was like, if he wouldn't have stopped, what were you gonna do? He's like, I was gonna tackle him. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, but I'm gonna get in trouble. I'm like, you will never be in trouble with me.
There's going to be one question: you start it or finish it.
Exactly.
You finish it, you're never going to get in trouble because you were defending yourself.
Exactly.
But if
And
you
that's
started
it,
it, now we're going to have a conversation.
100%. And that's what I told him, and that's what I'm instilling now. Like, there's always show me the options you took beforehand. And then if that's the solution, then that's the solution. It's never, like you said, start it, finish it, don't start it.
Yeah. Well, I think I see this a lot. Like personally, I see this a lot with there's a lot of terms and a lot of phrases that exist in social media that are never fully explained or articulated in practice, right? And so one of those is gentle parenting, right? Like a lot of people, like I'm an intense dude and I'm pretty militant when it comes to like addressing situations, but I'm actually pro gentle parenting as long, going back to framing, as you have an escalation point. Children by nature, and this is clinically proven with child psychology, they are boundary pushers. That they are literally trying to make sense of the world by overstepping boundaries. Your job as the parent is to create boundaries so that they have something to challenge against and then hold them should they go too far. So now they know cause and effect. What this gentle parenting concept has done is it's creating a guilt trip for women, mothers, who get to the end of the rope and either they don't have a partner or their partner isn't a dominant personality, and therefore they don't have an escalation point, which leaves them to be the escalation point. So then it creates the space where they now feel like a failure because they couldn't maintain gentle parenting. But the reality is your job should have ended when gentle stopped. And the masculine or dominant person, your partner, should have taken up that mantle and been like, all right, she's already asked you 4 fucking times nicely. Now it's my turn to come and step in and set that escalation point. And so because of that, we're seeing that as well with like you said, what are the steps you took? Now you have to have that escalation point because eventually you're going to have to, with certain people, you're going to have to finish what you said you were going to do, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can't just be like, hey, please stop. And then they're like, or what? And you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't, now you've just shown your hand that you're too weak to address it. And now they can just continue to push because they know you're never going to overstep. So I think you're doing it right by teaching him, like, here's your escalation path.
Yeah.
If you're forced to escalate, meaning you gave them the path and they chose over and over again to get to that point, you're not going to get in trouble because you followed the path of a righteous path of like, no, you're not going to do that. Please stop it. I told somebody else, it didn't stop. And they continued down that path. Now it's a consequence that they have knowingly and willingly taken. And that should be taught from like the age that your son is at all the way through adulthood. And we don't teach that mechanism anymore. We don't teach escalation paths to the point of we actually demonize people who escalate.
Yeah.
So like if you push me to a point where as an agreeable person, I've given you all these outs to not do it and you continue to do it, and then I hit you, society at large will be like, well, why'd you have to hit him? You didn't have to hit him. It's like, no, I did, because I gave him all these points to get out and he wouldn't. But I'm now being chastised because you forced me to escalate. No, you're not responsible. I should have been able to control myself. It's like, nope.
Yeah.
No, I did control myself. All those outs up to that point, to that explosive, that's your responsibility now. Well, you could have walked away. Yeah, I could have. Or maybe I couldn't have. But at the same time, why do I have to walk away if he's being an asshole?
Yeah. He
Right?
could have walked away too.
He could have walked away too. You're the one having a problem, so you're the one that takes responsibility. I didn't have a problem with you. You didn't have to talk to me. I didn't have to engage with you. I didn't have to do any of that stuff. I asked you nicely not to do something. But, this gentle concept is conflated to a point where like responsible parties now no longer have responsibility for their actions.
Yeah.
There's no responsibility consequence is what I like to say.
Yeah.
Right? Like they only see the consequence. They don't take into effect all the things that led up to the consequence. And then that person that got punched is like, oh, feel bad for me because this consequence happened to me. It's like my first question is like, what would you do?
Yeah.
Especially if I know that person and they're like I know you. You are a very agreeable personality type. You comport yourself with a certain level of decorum no matter where you are. So if Jeff just punched you in the face, the first question I'm going to ask is, what'd you do to Jeff?
Yeah.
What'd you do? Jeff is not one to just go punch people on the street randomly. There had to be a cause and effect. So what's the cause? Oh, he's just an asshole. Yeah, see, now I know you're lying because I know Jeff. He's not an asshole. We don't have that dialogue anymore.
Yeah.
In my experience, I don't see that dialogue happening. Although the people that I've punched usually end up being my friends. So there's a respect level there.
Oh, there's so many lessons to be learned to get punched in the face.
I think that's a good place to end it. It's a good place.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming to the Heroes Veritas podcast. So many lessons getting punched in the face. and to that notion, I would challenge anybody, man or woman, to get into some kind of a physical contact sport. Develop the skill set and learn what it actually feels like to get punched in the face. Most of us aren't as glass as we think we are.
No.
I think a lot of people have seen those videos where people get knocked out in one shot and they just assume that they're that. It's like those are like 1 in 100 shots to knock somebody out like that.
Oh, I've told people I'll give lessons at the Jeff Pease School of Fighting where I block all punches with my face.
I like it. Although I don't recommend it. The amount of brain damage.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really appreciate you taking the time, sir. I'm gonna wrap it up.
100%. I appreciate it.
And then you and I need to sync up later. But I really appreciate you taking the time. I always love our conversations. It always gets into some cool stuff, especially around the fatherhood stuff. I really like that. I need to get Tony on here so we can talk about being a girl dad.
Dude, we need a 3-way podcast and just break your record for longest podcast.
We would. Well, I don't know. So me and Tony had a podcast previously, and we brought our friend Troy on, and it was 3.5 hours long.
Whew, challenge accepted.
But we did not release it because at the time there were no support for that long of a fucking podcast, and I didn't know it yet. So
we need to get Tony on, and we need to unpack the 14-mile ruck because Tony was the warrior. Tony was the warrior on that one.
Tony definitely was the one that earned MVP for that one for sure. And then we can segue that into the new challenges
for sure.
But much appreciated, sir. I hope everybody that listened got a little bit of value talking about, masculinity, growth, gentle parenting, all the spectrum of being a father and unpacking that little demon gremlin that likes to tell us that we have glass ceilings when we don't. I seriously hope everybody starts, whether it's a pencil or some other innocuous thing. I think that's a great tactic, and I'm really glad that you shared it. I hope if you have a significant other, you guys can start working on something that allows you to be vulnerable in that space when you're having dark thoughts and can unpack it without all the other stickiness around it. I think that's a great tactic. So, as always, if you like what we share here, please like, comment, share, subscribe. More to come. We have a lot of great conversations. And Jeff, thank you again for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you, sir.